Hey, this is part 2 of lesson 2, and we're looking and starting at page 18. So for this question, this is from class example number 7. Consider the sequence x plus 2, 3x minus 1, and 2x plus 1. We want to determine the value of x such that these values form an arithmetic sequence. And then we want to determine the numerical value of these three terms, since we have an unknown value in each of them. So first of all, we'll start by making our list of variables, and so we'll start with our common difference. Now, if you look at the values we're given, x plus 2, 3x minus 1, and 2x plus 1, there's no actual numerical values that we can work with. So we're going to have to work with our common difference formula, which is d is equal to t2 minus 1, or sorry, t2 minus t1, or we could say it's also equal to t3 minus t2. Since we only have three terms, this is the highest we'll go. Alright, so let's list the actual terms we have. This is term 1, this is term 2, and this is term 3. So if I'm working with my difference, I'm trying to find my difference. I know that I could say that my difference equals my difference, or t2 minus t1 is equal to t3 minus t2. Alright, so we're going to start by using this formula here, where I say that t2 minus t1 is equal to t3 minus t2. This is going to help me find my common difference, or some common grounds for my common difference anyways. So t2, that is 3x minus 1, and from 3x minus 1 I'm going to subtract t1, which is x plus 2. And that equals t3 minus t2, t3 being 2x plus 1. And from that, I'm going to subtract t2, which was 3x minus 1. Now that I have it like this, I can combine my like terms. So I'm going to be left with 3x minus 1 minus x plus 2, and 2x plus 1 minus 3x minus 1. Now, as I combine my like terms, I have 3x, negative x can give me 2x, negative 1 and positive 2 is going to give me negative 1, subtract negative 2, sorry, or subtract positive 2, sorry, it's going to give me negative 3, and then I have a 2x and a 3x. That's going to give me 2x minus 3x will give me negative x, and positive 1 and negative 1, which I'm subtracting a negative 1, is going to give me positive 2. Okay, so I'm at this step now. I still haven't fully combined my like terms, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll bring this negative x to this side. So I'm adding x to both sides. That's going to give me, if I move up here, that'll give me 3x. And if I bring this negative 3 over here, I need to add 3 to both sides. 3x is equal to 5. Now, divide both sides by 3, and x is equal to 5/3. So that gives me a value of x. It still doesn't really give me my common difference, but that's fine. It gives me my value of x, which I can plug in to these three terms to find out what their numerical values are. So my first term, term 1, was x plus 2. And if x equals 5/3, then that's going to be 5/3 plus 2, which is going to be equal to 11 over 3. T2 was equal to 3x minus 1. So 3 times 5/3 minus 1. So 3 times 5 is 15. Divided by 3 is 5, minus 1 is 4. T3, I have 2 times 5 over 3 plus 1, 10 thirds plus another full, so 3 over 3, it's going to be 13 over 3. Alright, so those are our numerical values. Next we'll look at lesson number 8. Or class example number 8. They want us to use arithmetic means to determine the fifth term of this sequence, where the third and the eighth terms of the sequence are 12 and negative 18. So the third term, 1, 2, 3, is 12, and then if I keep going, the eighth term is negative 18, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and this is negative 18. Alright, so this is term 3 and this is term 8. And we want to know what the fifth term is. So we're looking for this term here, term 5. Now when we're starting with the question, first of all, we don't have the difference, the common difference, but there's also something else we don't have the first term. So if we're ever in this case, we know we're already told it's a sequence, so we don't really need a first term. In fact, our third term, which is 12, that can act as our first term. So we're going to say that A is equal to 12, or term 1, which is A, is equal to 12. And instead of calling term, or negative 18 term 8, we're going to call that term 6. So we're going to say that term 6 is equal to negative 18. Now, if I plug that into my formula that we looked at earlier on in this lesson, then in order to get term 6, all I need to do is say that term 6 is equal to A plus 5D. So term 6 being negative 18 and A being 12 and 5D, so 5 times the difference because we're using the term that comes after or before term 6. Now we combine like terms. If I subtract 12 from both sides, we're going to be left with negative 30, and that is equal to 5D. If I divide both sides by 5, 5D divided by 5, it's just D, and negative 30 divided by 5 is going to give me negative 6 for my common difference. So now all I need to do to find out what each consecutive term is, and each subsequent term, if I want, is I need to add negative 6. So, in order to find T5, that's the fifth term we were looking for, all I need to do is 12 minus 6, which would give me term 4, which would be 6, and then subtract another 6, and that would give me 0. So my fifth term in that sequence is 0. So now what we want to do is state the first term. We want to find out what A is. So what I got to do is work backwards, right? So if I subtracted 6 to get over here, and then I need to add 6 to get up here. So if I'm starting from 12, if I add 6 to find out what term 2 is, that's going to give me 18. And if I add another 6 to find out what term 1 was, that's going to give me 24. So, state the first term, A, that's 24, and the common difference of the sequence. So D, we already determined that earlier on, that's negative 6. Now we want to complete the following. What's term 8 minus term 3 divided by 8 minus 3? Well, term 8 was negative 18 minus term 3, which was positive 12, and divided by 8 minus 3, 5, and that's going to be my common difference of 6. Negative 18 minus 12 is negative 30, divided by 5 is negative 6. Now, write term 3 and term 8 in terms of A and D. So in terms of our first term and our common difference, and prove that T8 minus T3 divided by 8 minus 3 is equal to D. So this is a 2 or 3 question for sure. Whenever you're asked to prove something, that falls along the lines of tier 3. So term 3 is equal to a plus 2d. We're writing this in terms of a and d. And term 8 is a plus 7d. Again, writing it in terms of a and d. And we want to prove that t8 minus t3 divided by 8 minus 3 is equal to my common difference. So, excuse me. Term 8 we said was equal to a plus 7d. Term 3 we said was equal to a plus 2d. And we're going to divide all those by 8 minus 3 or divide them all by 5. Now, if I combine my like terms, I'm going to be left with a plus 7d minus a minus 2d. If I distribute that negative sign inside my brackets, that's all divided by 5. Combine my like terms, 7d minus 2d is 5d, and a and negative a cancel out, and we're left with 5. 5 divided by 5, we're left with just d. And so we've proved it. Next, we want to suggest a formula for finding the common difference of a sequence if you are given the value of the pth term and the qth term, so any term. So we could say that if we're given any value, p and q, p would be the first term that we're looking at, q would be whatever term comes after. And so we could say that tq, or the qth term minus tp from the pth term, is going to be equal to q minus p, just like we did up here, right? So if q is equal to 8, p is equal to 3, then q and p must equal to 8 and 3. So this is going to be a general formula that we can use. Last example, and then you should be able to do all the questions on this assignment, is the third and the eighth terms of a sequence are 12 and negative 18 respectively. So just like we were looking at earlier on, use a system of linear equations to determine the values of the first term and the common difference, and then determine the fifth term of the sequence. So this is just another way to do that, that question. So we want to use a system of linear equations. So term 8, is equal to a plus 7d. We know the actual value of that was negative 18. And term 3 was a plus 2d, and that was equal to positive 12. So when we're working with a system of linear equations, if you look at this, the formula that we're working with now, this looks a lot like our y equals mx plus b, right? It's just written a little differently if we compare these to this, where we're saying that 18 is given there, and we're saying that 7d is given there plus a, right? So it's almost, well, it is identical. It's an identical equation. So when we're working with a system of linear equations, what we're doing is we're combining these equations. So what we need to do is combine these equations. And when we're combining them, we're actually going to be subtracting this equation from this equation. So this is the second method of solving these types of problems. So if I subtract a is 0, 7 subtract 2 is 5, and we have that variable d there, and then negative 18 subtract 12 would give me negative 30. Right, and we're doing the same thing that we did in the previous example when we wrote the proof. We're actually following the exact same structure of that formula. So from here, I can find out what my common difference is. D is then equal to negative 6 if I divide both sides by 5. So now that I have my common difference, what we want to do is determine the fifth term of the sequence. Now before we do that, we want to find out what our first term is. So I can choose either term 8 or term 3 to determine what the value of a actually is. And we already know what it is since we solved this problem already, but if I wanted to plug my common difference into one of those equations, 7d is equal to negative 18, then a plus 7 times negative 6 is equal to negative 18, negative 6 being my common difference, and a subtract 42 is equal to negative 18. Now if I add 42 to both sides, add 42, then my value of a, negative 42 plus 42 is 0, negative 18 plus 42 is equal to 24. So my first term is 24, a is equal to 24, and my difference is equal to negative 6. Now to find out what term 5 is, a plus 4d is equal to 24 being the value of a plus 4 times negative 6 would be 24 subtract 24, which is equal to 0.